Well, let's get to one that, and we'll snip this out for a clip. So if people are catching this clip, go back and check the whole comic book talk, and check out the playlists that are below, so you'll know a little bit about some other stuff that we've been talking about. I have not finished issue number 2, but I didn't want to wait a lot longer to talk about this because um, we can kind of go through a lot of issue number 1, and we don't really have to spoil a whole lot because the whole issue is really set up for a ton of world building, a ton of setup. So, I don't know. How did you just find this because it's an image and you've had good luck dabbling with some of these, or did you get this through a recommend?
This was through a recommend in the comment section of one of my videos. I reviewed, what was it? It's one of the Mark Miller image ones. It might have been Nightclub or Nemesis,
Mhm.
and someone said, if you get a chance, please check this out. It's really good.
I was reminded of sort of like The Boys, right? Sort of that
Yeah,
feel of you live in a superhero universe with like characters that are sort of like divorced from reality. You have other characters that are immersed into what feels like everyday life for us. This book, the biggest thing that Tim Seeley did that I enjoyed right off the bat was he treats the readers with a lot of respect, as though you're very, very smart. So early on, you have this sequence where he's at like a bus stop and this guy in this truck's like, no, there's no bus, man. There's not been a bus forever. Then he kind of backs up and there's back and forth. And then he drops this thing about, you crossjack or something like that. Now, when this happened, I thought to myself, is crossjack a city? Is crossjack a nickname for something? Because you don't have a context yet. You don't understand the dynamics. That is some really good storytelling because we're just going to treat the reader as smart rather than trying to spoon feed them some.
absolutely. Yeah. I'm like you, Pops. I haven't read issue 2 yet. I've not got round to it, but this is really good. And it's the way he builds up the story. You don't have to tell everything at once. You're showing it, aren't you? Which is so
Yeah, show
important.
not tell. Yeah. And Tony Flex, I assume would be the artist's name, um, because he helped co-create this with Seeley. The art is that's it. That's what you get. You get like a kind of a realism, not
Yeah.
really photorealism. Like you have just this very grounded. I was reminded very much into this image. It really struck me because it felt like a rock album cover or like a music cover or something like
Yeah.
that, where
Like
he's
a
walking.
U2, Heartland.
Yeah, he's walking into a town, this Farmington town where he lives, and basically the character is going home to see mom and dad, and that's dad there on the left in the middle panel, who's basically like, "Well, you're awful late for dinner." It's kind of like it took him because there's no bus. No one wants to help him out, so he had to walk from the edge of town. The sign says 10 miles, so that's how that plays out. And again, we're going to go through a lot of the book, but I don't think we're going to spoil a whole lot because a lot of this is just set up. So
Yeah,
this is his mom
absolutely.
coming into the kitchen. There's dinner. Dinner is literally just on a plate. There's comments about how uh, they've already eaten. They get into conversation briefly about how you're going to get a job. What are you going to do? It's kind of like setting up like the loser guy who's come home to mom and dad. You don't know how long he's going to be staying with them, living in the basement kind of thing. And I purposely kind of grabbed this panel on the right because it's her saying a prayer and it says, "Bless us, O Lord, for the gifts which we are about to receive, and bless our son, help him find peace, and forgive him, Lord, for bringing disgrace upon his old family." Amen. And there his face is just like, seriously, like, yeah. I thought that was great.
It's
It
great
tells
because it
us,
starts out so serious, doesn't it? Like it's a proper prayer, and then yeah, as you say, the way she just like puts those phrases in, you're thinking, oh my god, what's he done?
yes, yeah, and they're not giving us a lot of information. They're just not going to get into things. And then the story just kind of moves along in sort of a tedious manner with him talking. There's this cutaway on the right. I mean, it's on the left in the middle, which at the time I didn't quite get my head around a whole lot. Like, what are we cutting away to here?
Yeah,
Like, what are we talking about? Like, you don't have context. Again, treat the writers like they're smart. Um, and they're just talking in a manner that just makes you feel like he's kind of a loser and you don't know why. And then later they have this whole sequence where he goes to like the local bar and that's kind of what's in the middle there, where he's kind of interacting with people and he's going to throw darts when this suited creature. I'm reminded of like the Rhino costume from Spider-Man, where it's like
It
this
does look
dude,
a bit like that, yeah.
his face is showing, but he's got all this stuff, and he has sort of like, I guess, cyber techniques that make him strong. And he just bursts in and just starts talking about, Crossjack.
Pops, just wanted to point out, the first panel, the first flashback where you see the female character with the gorgeous
Hmm.
ginger hair looking back, that gave me a Watchman vibe, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense? It's like you see
Absolutely.
someone, it's that, something's happened with her. You know that already, don't you? So, yeah, I just
Yeah,
wanted
you
to
already
point that
know
out.
she's kind of given him like, I have feelings for you
Yeah,
feelings, right?
and
Which is
his little
definitely,
smile. Yeah.
hmm yeah, you have a lot of like Watchmen inspirations, but I won't say it has that type of tone.
No,
Um,
that's right.
yeah, so like inspirations would not be a surprise. So he has this fight. Let's go back. So he has the fight with this guy, and his name is very strange. His name is like Hey Dog, and it's like
Yeah, it
a
made me laugh
dog.
though. Did it make you laugh?
Oh,
Hey, dog.
I was just kind of like, huh?
Mm.
But again, everything is also very rudimentary, like a nickname like Crossjack, and we'll get to some of the other stuff that's introduced.
Yeah.
Um, so he just basically just starts fighting with this guy. Like the guy actually is trying to communicate with him, but he never even gives the guy a chance to talk. He just starts throwing down. They kind of throw him out of the bar. And during the fight, he just kind of grabs like a trash can lid and whatever and starts pummeling this guy. Well,
Mm.
this group just shows up, and this is where you do kind of get Watchmen slash old Image comics. Like I thought about,
Yeah.
like Youngblood and things like Wetworks, things like that. They just come
I love this
strolling on
scene. I
out.
love these kind of scenes where you're shown suddenly multiple characters. You've no idea who they are, but it's intriguing, isn't it?
Hmm. Hmm. Um, and then you get this interaction, and basically this becomes like the boys part for me, where they're like giving him like, you're under a contract with the company, you're not allowed to use anything as a shield. He's like, well, it was a
Mm.
garbage can lid. He's like, or shield like object. You can't use the name Crossjack. It's copyrighted. And then it's like this person's like, um, kind of talking smack because they're igniting their hands. Like so there's some sort of power that they have. You don't under At this point you don't understand the extent of a whole lot of
No.
what's going on. You just know this stuff's happening, and they're laying the groundwork for the fact that there's a company. They've copyrighted elements of whatever the superheroes can or can't do. They have no problem using legal recourse to do it, as though that would matter to superhero individuals, but evidently it does.
Was
And I
it
think
the
for you,
part? Sorry, Potts. What's part of what he's saying here? Like the things you can't do. Have you seen some of the things written down? It's like solving crimes, battling supervillains. That's so
hmm
fun. It's like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be a hero, aren't I?
hmm and I like, or engaging in large scale events against cosmic or otherwise infinitely powerful beings. it's it is funny because it's such a word salad. It's not something that someone actually would say or would say exactly. Like the cadence wouldn't work. Like to say this out loud would be it would be hard to sound natural and
Yeah,
not sound
absolutely.
like the like an infomercial commercial or something like that. But again, I don't know about you, Gray, but what really was getting me, and I had to go along for the ride for a minute because I'm like, I can't get myself caught up into the who's who and the what's what yet. I just got to have faith that this is going to pay off and we're going to understand some of it.
Remember having faith when you read a new comic book, a brand new issue. You used to go in and think, okay, you're giving yourself to the writer, like, okay, get me involved, entice me, pull me in.
Yeah, trust. You trust that they're going to pay this off. You're going to
Yeah.
trust that they're going to let you understand some of this stuff. I skipped over a lot because I didn't want to get too far into
Mm,
some of the other elements to kind of wrap into it.
sure.
But then, because he has this relationship with the hometown girl, there's some other interactions there around the super team briefly, and then you have this cutaway to Hey Dog, and Hey Dog has been murdered, and there's like a special delivery message on him, and that's kind of how the main story sort of comes to a close, and where we're going to pick up later on for issue number 2.
Wow, that's a shocking ending, isn't it? A real
Yeah,
cliffhanger for
because
sure.
it didn't even have the feel of everything else. Like this was so
No.
intense. Everything else
Yeah.
seemed very grounded into real life. And sure, there was a fight at a bar, but it was more like actual fighting. Like it was actually like, one punch here and a little blood to the face and whatever. This seemed like a gruesome serial killer. And obviously the chains are reminiscent of like Spawn and things like that, which is very
Mm,
supernatural feeling, those kinds of things. And then when you get to the next panel and you're like, images of Local Man, it looks like something right out of the 90s of like promotional material. And you're like, what on earth? What
yeah.
is. So I have said it. I have to admit, Image does this too. Images, the reason I don't like the ones that Image do is because they put a lot of substance in theirs, but they use backstories. I can't stand the second backstory. I really wish they would just stop doing this. But
Really?
all almost, I was having an issue with the Marvel book. I did a review about Doctor Strange, which will come out in a couple of days, and it was like there's like this backstory that ties to the main story so intricately. It's like, well, then why didn't you just write this in there? I don't understand why. Now this was done differently. What they did was they basically now start giving you these. This is the backstory. So
Yeah.
here's the backstory of who everybody is, what some of their powers are, and you have these very intense introductions, colors, who all these different characters are, and things like that. Um, and this is where you do kind of get into, Watchmen meets Boys meets Youngblood meets, all Wildcats, all this stuff that we like.
Mm,
And you start to get dynamics like here's your hot redhead on the right, and then this is this guy with this big cross who's far right religious guy, pro gun guy, stereotype. That's guy here.
Punisher style, yeah.
Yeah, but he has a relationship with her, which is you can see that then briefly there, and then you have this again on that bottom right. You have that exact same image that we had earlier, where she's looking over her shoulder back at him. So we have love triangle tensions, is what they're alluding
Yeah.
to, but without saying things, without saying anything cheeky or silly. Do you have any other? Because the one other question I wanted to ask you, wasn't it fun how the main story felt, I mean, this was a lot of colors, but for the most part, most of the book has a very grounded look of color and stuff like that, like this,
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
right? And then you get a little bit of ramp up of some colors and conflict, and then the heroes arrive. But then when you get this backstory, you're thrown into not just a backstory, you're also thrown into like the look of like 90s comics. You're thrown into some stuff that felt like 80s and 90s, and the
Yeah.
colors are very bright and vibrant, and everything was different. It was very interesting. I would
This
say that
screams 90s, doesn't it? This whole image just screams 90s, like X-Force, X-Men, as you say.
yeah, it's definitely those type of characters of mysterious powers and teams and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's what the next couple pages do. They just kind of go through setting all this up and the who's who, and they're fighting one next to another. They talk about Crossjack's role in the team a little bit, things like that. So you're getting basically just a flashback story to what has led up to where we are now. We don't know exactly where it is in the timeline. We just
No.
know it has. And then, of course, this is the cover for issue 2.
Pops the big image on the left of the
Mm-hmm.
Crossjack, close up. Doesn't that just like it's come straight from an X-Men page? I'm not
It
sure the
looks
character, but
exactly like Rob Liefeld's work.
yeah, doesn't it? Yeah.
Exactly like his work on Youngblood, Prophet. He did a book called Prophet,
Ah, heard
exactly
of
like
it.
that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and just so everybody knows, this is not a major spoiler. And I know you haven't read it, Gray. Issue 2 does begin with it's the next day. The police show up. They arrest him because the dude's been killed. He's like, "You think I did this?" And then, of course, he's given up his alibi because he had that meal with the farm girl, right? The lady that he had a relationship when he was
Yeah.
young. Well, it turns out she's the wife of the police interrogator. I don't know if he's the police chief or not. I don't remember. And then, of course, he's seen these graphic photos of what happened to Hey Dog. And between that and whatever happened last night, he basically pukes right next to this mural of him. This says, "Welcome to Farmington, the hometown of the world famous superhero Crossjack."
Crossjack.
So I thought that was a good place for us to stop. And that was before I knew you hadn't finished number 2. I just thought this was a good place to stop and not
Oh, it's
spoil
perfect.
anything that happens next, because it's all been set up. It's all been lead up. You could probably we're probably going to be able to finish issue number 2 and then go back and read issue number 1 again and pick up some of the pieces of things we didn't quite understand or appreciate more. So I have to appreciate the recommend. I thought this was actually a nice, fun read, a nice change of pace from some of the stuff that's been done over the last couple of years in particular. But this is Image is old school comic book making where they will make the artsy stuff in one pile, and with political messaging. Eric Larson has never held back. If you read Eric Larson is very transparent about his politics. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, Savage Dragon is who he is, right? But that it's in a bucket over here, and then this is over here. We're gonna do this. He's gonna do Spawn. It's this is the way it's supposed to be done, and it's a shame that the big two just got away from that, and that's what I think has happened. Yeah,
Pops, what do you think of Savage Dragon? It's a title, I'm aware of it, but I've never really read it. I've read the odd issue here and there, but never really enjoyed
I
it.
just can't get into it, and I think it's
No.
just that it can't go. For me, it just never went full Hellboy and interesting and immersive. And he wears like the police outfit, but he's like this dragon. And then, of course, a lot of books that came along later. Again, he is very transparent with his politics, and it's very in your face with it. He's not. Okay, so just spoiler alert: he is very anti-Republican. So he has books completely trashing and mocking President Bush and then President Trump. He's in your face. There's like a pornographic Savage Dragon cover, and that it had to be made with like a black bag.
Really?
Oh yeah, there's some
No
stuff that's
way.
just like, and for me, I just kind of feel like ugh about it. I mean, it's just not my thing, and I think it's also because I just really couldn't get into that one when it first came out. It just wasn't my thing. I just couldn't get into it. I don't even know how to answer their question really too
No,
much.
no, that's all
It just
right.
sometimes it's just not my thing, And I have to be honest, I didn't last long in the original Spawn run. You get into 20 something issues. I was probably out for a while. Then around 50 or so, I kind of got back in. I had like gone backwards, but maybe not every single issue. So I ended up having like, from like the late 30s well into like 60. And then I would kind of fizzle out again. And I have this massive regret. And I have this, I teased it last night. I'm going to tease it again with you. If you haven't looked at the Spawn books in like the 200s, between 200 and 300, their print runs tanked. So they end up making only like some of these books probably have maybe 20,000 or less copies. But they
Okay.
did these amazing, beautiful covers that are homages to some of the most classic imagery. Because he loves to do his own tributes. So he'll do like Spawn 3, tributes to, the Spider-Man 300 or
Yeah.
Spider-Man. No, he went full on. So there's like the Hulk one with the, how they have the Hulk, the Wolverines, the claws out, and then it's the Hulk reflection in the claws, that famous Incredible Hulk 340 one. Yeah, so there's all these beautiful covers, and because the print runs were so low, they're extremely hard to find, and they're rather expensive. So if you can catch them digitally, guys, or if you go to a shop and they happen to have all these older Spawn books, it may be worth a look because some of them are beautiful. I don't know what the stories are like. I've never read any of them, but I
No.
these covers were super cool. So anyway, so there's a recommend from us from this guy who's got me into. I could definitely second the recommend. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. We love to hear from you guys because it came from one of you guys out there recommending something for us, which is what this is the best part about doing this is that we can have that kind of interaction like old school comic book store stuff where you'd be hanging out, might meet somebody in the store. Oh yeah, what are you reading? What are you doing? Whatever. Next thing you know, you're down the rabbit hole with some other thing that you had never even heard of before. So that's what this is great about. Thanks again for that, Greg, because it's been awesome.
No, that's exactly it. You're right. That's one of the best things about comments when you get, great recommendations in your
Mm-hmm.
YouTube video comments or even on Twitter. So yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no. So I'm gonna, so if people are catching this clip, make sure you check out this whole live stream, check out his channel. So that'll be there in the description as well. So.